Page 22. It seems to me that the intention of our American doctrine of the separation of church and state is to deny the legitimacy of deducing politically acceptable action from dogma, anyone's. But, aside from that type of dogmatic deduction, so obvious among those who engage in one-issue politics, one's dogmas and doctrines should be brought into the public square, especially when it can be shown that they have strong affinities with the dogmas and doctrines which inspired American democracy in the first place, and which sustained it at times of great crisis in its history. The point made so tellingly by the late German-American Protestant theologian, Paul Tillich, died in 1965, that no one really acts without an ultimate concern, is especially germane. 37. For it means that no area of human discourse and action is value-free, and it is better for the operation of one's values to be publicly visible and, thus, socially responsible and responsive, rather than to be forced to be a purely private matter and, thus, in danger of becoming socially irresponsible and unresponsive, in other words, dogmatic, in the pejorative sense of that term. Here, too, the late American Protestant theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, died in 1971, still has much to teach all of us about how biblical theism can be seen as the most adequate foundation for democracy without making it theocratic, which literally means the rule of God, but usually means the rule of church. 38. 5. The concluding question to be addressed is, to quote my grandfather, page 23. So, is all of this good or bad for the Jews? Well, I believe that this is good for the Jews, very good, because I also believe that Judaism does have some very important points to make in the moral and legal discourse of our society. There is a mission of Israel, and the exercise of that missionary project is totally consistent with the cultural, the political, even the juridical interests of Jews in American society. First, if we Jews regard ourselves as having a mission in America today, then we obviously cannot accept the Zionist doctrine of the negation of the diaspora, Shelalat Hagolah. This does not mean, however, that we can or should return to the anti-Zionism of the earlier liberal Jewish proponents of this idea. We Jews are a community constituted by the Torah, 39, and that alone makes us quite different from a denomination in the American Protestant sense of that term. Our Torah-constituted community must be concerned with the land and state of Israel, non-observant, even atheistic, Jews, the Hebrew language, and other ethnic matters. In Greek, ethnos means people, and the Torah certainly designates us as a people, and because of that designation as Am Yisrael, the people who strive with God. Genesis 32 verse 29. I resist any secularist interpretation of Jewish peoplehood. The fact that we affirm that the Lord God of Israel is also creator of heaven and earth, and the fact that we are bound by the law and teaching of the Torah, wherever we happen to live, indicates on religious grounds the validity of any Jewish community to exist, anywhere the Torah can be studied and the commandments observed. 40. Furthermore, we are morally bound. Page 24. To support in every way a society which allows us the freedom to live as authentic Jews, and which itself is bound by a law which we consider grounded in the law of God for all humankind. None of this implies that the unique Jewish status of the land and state of Israel be denigrated or even bracketed in any way by American Jews. It simply means that we American Jews can cogently argue on precise Jewish religious grounds that America has value for us, and that we have value for America. I emphasize this because I believe that the religious and intellectual life of American Jewry has been impoverished by the assumption, consciously maintained by some, unconsciously by others, that Jewish life in America is at best transient, that America is a treif medina, literally, a non-kosher society, a charge made at the turn of this century by some East European rabbis who attempted to dissuade, mostly unsuccessfully, their flocks from joining the mass migration to America. That Jewish life in America is ultimately impossible. There is little in Jewish tradition and little in American Jewish experience, as recent studies have now shown. 41. To validate this view, hopefully, it will become a topic of more and more dialogue between Israeli and American Jews. Second, what are some of the values about which Judaism and American Jews can inform American social and political life? Since Jews and Judaism have suffered so, especially in this century of incomparable horrors, perhaps it is best to express them as a series of negations or prophetic warnings. A. Judaism and American Jews have a good deal to warn America. Page 25. About the danger of depersonalization in our society. The most valuable aspect of the Jewish doctrine of the human person as the image of God, for society, is that it gives the widest definition of human personhood possible, without eliminating the equally important distinction between the human and the non-human. 42. However, the tendency in the 20th century has been the exact opposite, that is to say, to limit personhood based on arbitrary factors such as physical condition, race, age, etc. This has been done by the state in the person of those who have the political power to do so. Here is where Judaism and the experience of the Jews once again coalesce, that is to say, the Jews have been the most agonized victims of the denial of this doctrine of Judaism. Therefore, those Jews who are intent that Americans, let alone Europeans who were closer to the scene of the crime, never forget the Holocaust and all that led up to it and made it possible, must eschew arbitrary definitions of human personhood, so contrary to both Torah and Jewish experience. B. Judaism and American Jews have a good deal to warn America about the danger of deculturization in our society. Not only does Judaism encourage Jews to live according to our own traditions and culture, it also encourages the same for non-Jews. This can best be illustrated by a Hasidic story. My late revered teacher, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, died in 1972, once told me about Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement in 18th century Poland. It seems as though the Baal Shem Tov had a Catholic coachman. One day when out riding, they passed a shrine of a saint, the type of which the Polish countryside abounded in. The coachman did not make the sign of the cross when they passed by it. Page 26. The Baal Shem Tov immediately ordered his close disciple who was with him then to fire the man. He reasoned that if his own was no longer sacred for him, he certainly would not respect what was sacred for someone else. The story is typical of very sound and persistent Jewish doctrine. 43. The modern industrial process of deculturization, turning everyone into the similar copy of his or her neighbor, thereby imitating the mass production of our own machines, creates a dangerous cultural and emotional vacuum. It denies an overall purpose to human life and simultaneously destroys our link with our past, which once did reveal such purposes to us. 44. As such, it makes modern societies so vulnerable to the likes of Hitler, whose simplistic appeals to fears and fantasies no longer had to face, in any strong sense, the mediating safeguards of subtle and multifaceted tradition. Therefore, when some Jews seem to delight in being in the foreground of all that is irreverently avant-garde, they should ponder how much similar Jewish contributions to the traditionally vacuous culture of Weimar Germany did not destroy those aspects of German historical culture which may have been better bases of resistance to Hitler had they not been so discredited already. 45. Here again we see how Torah enlightens Jewish experience and how Jewish experience illustrates Torah. C. Judaism and American Jews can also teach America about the dialectic between faith and history. The problem with so much of Christian moral teaching in America, especially traditional Christian moral teaching, Catholic, Orthodox, Evangelical, is its fundamentalism. Page 27. Now, fundamentalism means many things, but it seems to be characterized by a conviction that all the answers are right here in the book, and it is only obstinance or ignorance which prevents God's plan from being implemented to immediately solve all our social ills. In this sense, fundamentalism is certainly not an essentially Christian outlook. Much of the traditionalist Jewish community is just as fundamentalistic. In this view, history, the accumulated experience of highly fallible humans, has no value, indeed is regarded as a threat to the truth. Here is where the Jewish obsession with the law, so often denigrated by Christians who misread Paul, is germane. 46. For, as we have seen, the law is not a divine oracle which lights up whenever we approach it with a question. The law is, rather, an historically developing system which subjects the most cogently argued theory to the collective precedents of the centuries-old community. Fundamentalism is impatient with this slow, often bumbling process, and this is precisely why, in our century especially, it has been so easily manipulated by all sorts of political fanatics who offer instant solutions to complex social problems. The law saves us from this type of utopian pseudo-messianism, just as it saves us from the relativistic vacuum wherein all norms are taken simply as matters of taste and, therefore, outside the range of rational discourse. 47. For these reasons, I regard America today as providing a unique religious challenge to Judaism and the American Jews. It seems that at long last we are being taken seriously. Page 28. By some of the most thoughtful elements in American society today, and we are being taken seriously as Jewish Jews. How seriously we will take ourselves will largely depend on the Jewish piety, learning and insight of those whom we make the leaders of our community in America. Heretofore, we American Jews, contrary to the tendency of almost all of previous Jewish history, have hardly looked for piety, learning, and Jewish insight in our leaders. But now the times have changed radically. We must be up to them, demanding that those who speak about us and for us be capable, spiritually and intellectually, to articulate and implement our unique destiny in America. Page 29. Notes. 1. These Jews are advocates of the famous maxim of the early Jewish Enlightenment, Haskalah, thinker Judah Leib Gordon, died in 1892. That is to say, be a Jew at home and a human being outside. See Encyclopedia Judaica, Volume 7, page 801. 2. Kiddushin 66a. 3. See The Naked Public Square, Grand Rapids, 1984. Passim. 4. See Leo Pfeffer, Creeds in Competition, New York, 1958. 46 ff. 5. See Joseph Cherba, The Politics of Defeat, New York, 1977, especially 166 ff. 6. See his Anti-Semite and Jew, translated G. J. Becker, New York, 1948, 67 ff. 7. The great proponent of this idea was Horace M. Collin, died in 1974. See his Cultural Pluralism and the American Idea, Philadelphia, 1956, especially 85 ff. 8. See Charles E. Silberman, A Certain People, New York, 1985, 254 ff. Also, Chaimai Waxman, American Jews in Transition, Philadelphia, 1983, 124 ff. 9. This doctrine was promulgated at the very beginnings of Zionism. See Ahad Hareim, The Negation of the Diaspora, 1909, in the Zionist Idea, edition A. Hertzberg, Philadelphia, 1959, 27-277. For a critique of this doctrine on cultural lines, see Mordecai M. Kaplan, The Negation of Jewish Life in the Diaspora, 1948, Ibidem, 539-542. 10. See Peter Berger, The Sacred Canopy, Garden City, New York, 1969, 41. Page 30. 11. C. D. Novak, The Image of the Non-Jew in Judaism, New York and Toronto, 1983, especially Chapter 4. 12. See Emil L. Fackenheim, The Religious Dimension in Hegel's Thought, Bloomington and London, 1967, 231-233. 13. See Groundwork of the Metaphysic of Morals, translated H. J. Payton, New York, 1964, 88 ff. 14. C. Cohen, Religion of Reason Out of the Sources of Judaism, translated S. Kaplan, New York, 1972, 283 ff. Beck, The Essence of Judaism, translated V. Grubenwieser and L. Pearl, New York, 1948, 68 ff. 15. C. Kohler, Jewish Theology, New York, 1918, reprinted 1968, 325 ff. Hirsch, My Religion, edition G. B. Levi, New York, 1925, 259-262, 288 ff. 16. For the sharp reaction to Adler's agnosticism by liberal Jewish thinkers, who were most threatened by it, see Benny Kraut, From Reform Judaism to Ethical Culture. The Religious Evolution of Felix Adler, Cincinnati, 1976, 135 ff. 17. See Judaism as a Civilization, New York, 1934, 227 ff. See also the earlier critique of Ahad Hareim in Selected Essays, translated L. Simon, Philadelphia, 1912, 184 ff. Interestingly enough, Ahad Hayem's critique is specifically directed against the version of this idea proposed by the French traditionalist Rabbi S. Monk. The idea was usually, but not exclusively, proposed by liberal rabbis. 18. See Kraut in the cited work 169 ff. Page 31. 19. Igrit Moshe, Ora Hayim, New York, 1963. Volume 2, pages 196 to 198. Number 25. 20. See Novak, The Image of the Non-Jew in Judaism, Passim. 21. See Niederim LLB. 22. Tosefta Soda, Chapter 8, page 6. Soda 35b. 23. Judaism was first characterized as a theocracy by Josephus. See Contra Apionem, Volume 2, pages 164 to 167. 24. Mishneh Torah, Hilkot Melakim, Chapter 8, page 10. See Novak in the cited work 53 to 56. 25. See We Hold These Truths, New York, 1960, especially Chapter 5. For ancient Jewish suspicions of the combination of ecclesiastical and royal power, see Kiddushin 66a and Yerushalmi. Harayat 3.2/47c. 26. Along these lines note Robert Bolt, A Man for All Seasons, New York, 1960. Act 1, 37 to 38. Roper. Then you set man's law above God's. More. No, far below. But let me draw your attention to a fact. I'm not God. The currents and eddies of right and wrong, which you find such plain sailing, I can't navigate. I'm no voyager. This country's planted thick with laws from coast to coast, man's laws, not God's, and if you cut them down, do you think you could stand upright in the winds that would blow then? 27. See Craven's Civil War in the Making, Baton Rouge, 1959, 64 ff. Also, Carl Becker, The Declaration of Independence, New York, 1922, page 6.